Hi, Sounders. So here am I, sitting in a car park in Manchester after the away fixture we've just had with Preston North End. It's not a particularly happy story, this one, is it? But I have to say first that it was a lovely day. It was a good day to be in Manchester. I beg your pardon, a good day to be in Preston, because it was an away visit by Pompey, and away visits are always special, and this one was amazing. The volume of Pompey fans that made that trip, 3,600 plus, makes you proud. Away visits, as I say, are always special, and you have to find somewhere to sort of gather before the game. I couldn't get into the first place that I was going. I need to find a parking space and all that stuff. Couldn't get in the first place. In fact, it didn't even exist. I looked up away parking areas for away fans on the Preston North End website, and the first one it gave me doesn't even exist anymore. Anyway, the second one did, and it was called St Catherine's Social Club. It was great, Sounders. If ever we go to Preston again, and I'm expecting we will next season, let's go to St Catherine's Social Club. The Pompey fans in there, they mobbed it, and it was just a really nice place. £3 for the car park, £1 to get into the social club, and then, best of all, pie, peas and gravy, £3. The best pies, peas and gravy I've ever had at £3. Wow. I mean, everyone was doing it. And I met lots of lovely people, many of whom, I have to say, listen to Pompey Sound. And one wife there told me that her husband listens to my match report in the bath on Sundays, which is a very nice image. It was a good place. It was very happy. Everyone was very positive. They took advantage of the fact that it was mobbed by Pompey by having 2 raffles actually happening while we were there and drawn while we were there. I didn't win in either of them. £20 prize money each time. One of the things that I did some interviews actually while I was in the St Catherine's Social Club with Pompey fans. One of the things that they wanted to see out of this game was more than they'd seen against Plymouth Argyle, understandably, but they really expected changes to be made, and their predictions, of course, were true, because at 2 o'clock along came the team announcement on social media, and so we learnt that Marlon Pack and Ritchie and Swanson were being rested at Preston, and in were coming Bramhall and Devlin and Kusini Yengi. So that meant that there was going to be some rearrangement in defence with the loss of Marlon Pack, and we could all see that Ogilvie would take his place, and Bramhall would replace Ogilvie at left back. And so, reluctantly, we left St Catherine's Social Club and meandered down to the ground to join the mob, the 3,600 plus fans who, as far as I could see, because I couldn't see the whole end from where I was sitting in the end, but it appeared to me that we were filling what is called the Bill Shankly Cop at Preston, because of course he did play, didn't he? Shankly did play for Preston in his day as a player. and is obviously revered there, just as he is down the road in Liverpool. 3,600 fans produces pressure. It occurs to me, all round it applies pressure. So it applies pressure to us and our players, but that should be good pressure. But it also provides pressure on the Preston side, because it indicates that this is a special game, and that that they are going to be challenged, because they're challenged already by the crowd, I can tell you that. And it also woke up the Preston fans. You felt that although they were overawed to some degree by the presence of such a large away crowd, they did feel the need to be more expressive than I suggest to you they normally are. So it was quite a noisy atmosphere, and I honestly feel that a large away support does steel a home team to work that bit harder than they would normally. I think that's what happened, and it made it a slightly tougher game than it might have been. I don't think that's a reason not to have good support. Of course it's not, and the good support should lift us and does lift us visibly sometimes. It did for our goal, but it works both ways. It can work both ways for the teams. Now, I'm talking to you from a car park. I haven't been home. I haven't seen the match again, and I haven't even seen highlights of the match. So my report's not that detailed, really. I just have to tell you that in the first half, I felt frustrated by us. We were marginally the better side in the first half, I felt. But we didn't make that count as so often. Devlin and Bramall did well, because they seemed to be targeted. I'm sure there was a plan. There was a perception, a Preston perception that we might be weaker for the changes down the flanks, because that's where they seem to come at us most consistently. And you will not be surprised that Terry Devlin was as sturdy and as aggressive as always, and that created a dominance of his winger. And Bramall, he's got such pace, and he's so keen to go forward that makes that dealt with that side of the field pretty effectively as well. And he did get down the flanks quite frequently, and his crossing is good. And in crossing is good. And in midfield, Potts, I thought, had a better game than certainly the last few games he's had, which have been slightly disappointing. But he really did pretty well, and our control over the midfield. It was a struggle, but we held our own, if not a little bit more, in the first half, I felt. But no goals. And at the interval, Paul Heckingbottom. I love Heckingbottom's name, because if ever there's a sort of Lancashire name, I feel it's Heckingbottom. So he should be at Preston. Anyway, he's a decent manager. And he made 4 changes at half-time, so he was obviously not happy with what he'd seen. I think Pompey were going to win the game at half-time. Even though one was frustrated by them not making their control count, you felt that it was going to come eventually. 4 changes made a difference, and we lost some of that control. It was a much more even second half. In fact, maybe it was slightly in favour of the home side, and slightly I felt that a 0-0 draw was something that we would settle for. It didn't occur. At 76 minutes we conceded. Listen, I was at the opposite end of the ground. We were all at the opposite end of the ground from the goal, from their goal, Preston goals, and it was very hard, therefore, to decipher exactly what had gone on in the scramble for Porteous to score on the far post. It was just horrible. So it's horrible viewing, isn't it? When you're a fan of a goal being scored against you, especially at the far end where you can't really register it too clearly. I know that it was irritating for Pompey that Ched Evans had a hand in that goal, because you could tell when he came on, he is not the most popular footballer around Pompey. According to that reception, he got a heavy booing, and had a hand in the goal by all accounts. But I can't make too much judgment about it. We will have to have a look at it closely. But it was just that they were starting to exert a bit of pressure. They were looking a little bit dangerous, so you couldn't be absolutely shocked about it coming. And of course, we then redoubled our efforts, as you would expect, and there was a succession of corners. It was very good. Our crowd, of course, were right in it, in the game, and we had about 4 corners in a row, from memory, leading up to a scoring, and they were pretty much all taken by Murphy. It takes a decent corner, of course, as we know. And Colby volleyed it in. It was great. It was deserved. Overall, it was certainly deserved. And again, personally, and probably by then, most of the crowd would have been happy with the point, and felt that was sort of a job decently done, and could have had more, but it could have been worse. Well, it got worse, as you know. And we conceded again, 87 minutes, horrible. It was a horrible breakaway goal. Again, difficult to watch from our end in any detail. It was a horrible time to concede, because really there was no time left. Schmidt had been rounded by Torgerson, wasn't it? Who scored from an incredibly narrow angle. A decently taken goal, I guess. But all you can really say after that, Sounders, was the feeling of dismay and disappointment that surrounded me in that end crammed with Pompey was heartbreaking, really. If we go through the players, of course, I mean, you know, they all worked hard, and I'm not going to throw too much criticism of the changes in the team or the players that we saw on the pitch, or maybe just a little as we go through it. Schmidt, I don't know how much he would have been to blame. He did make a characteristically fine save during the game with his feet, and his ability to be the spare man at the back and a sweeper at the back. That's the word I was looking for. Is marked. It's a real characteristic of a modern keeper anyway, but he does it well, and he keeps his cool incredibly well, and that's why we played ourselves out of some difficulties at times, pretty cleverly, and it was enjoyable to watch. But he conceded twice, so something went wrong there. Young Devlin, his work rate's great, and I thought he did extremely well, and I'm not quite sure why he came off. He was replaced, wasn't he, by the young Australian striker whose name I failed to write down here. But I remember that what happened was, this is a detail that I'm wandering off the point a bit, but he got booked, the Aussie striker, in the 92nd minute, and I felt when he got booked, I felt that he'd been doing something right. Because at that point, why was he being stuck on? He was being stuck on maybe to make a nuisance of himself, maybe to score an amazing goal, but also just to prove difficult, an awkward opponent, and he got booked. So fair enough. I'm not going to blame him for that. Regan Poole, up against big opposition lads, big units, he did okay. I think he did pretty well. It wasn't an easy day for him, but I think he did fine. And Ogilvie also did very well in that position. Everyone had predicted, I think he has played there before, hasn't he? I know he has, in fact. At the centre of the back four, on the left side, he played well there. And it certainly no blame could be cast on him for the way the game resulted. And Bramall, similarly, I thought, had an excellent game. In fact, that change, the left-back change, was probably the most successful one, I think, of the changes that were made for the game. But Bramall, because of his pace, because of his accuracy of crossing, I think he's worth playing left back, but then so is Ogilvie. So when Ogilvie's found a different position, that's fine, and who knows how long that will go on for. But there was nothing you could point the finger at about that particular pair of changes that would have lost us the game. Potts, as I said to you earlier, had a much better game. I thought he did well. Dazelle, a little bit less so, a little bit less standing out, although he did have possibly the best effort on goal in the first half for Pompey, with a left footer that drifted past the post. And it's nice to see him having a go. He needs to do that, and of course we need to see one of them go in at some point. But he did well, and he was substituted after 92 minutes by Marlon. I'm not sure why that was, really. I don't know. One hopes desperately it wasn't anything to do with injury, but maybe just, he's had a long run of games now. Auchichie flatters to deceive. I like him. I always stick up for him. I know he's clever. I know he's got a little bit more skill about him than many of our forward players, and he took, of course, a great goal the other night at Fratton Park, but he was too easily suppressed, and what he did rarely, not really, but rarely, infrequently led to anything that really threatened Preston side. That's what I feel about Auchichie, and I thought it was perfectly reasonable. He was very unhappy, as you should be if you're substituted. He was substituted after 59 minutes, and he was slow. He walked very slowly off the pitch, but not trying to waste time just because he was a bit off. But I thought it was a correct decision, and Kate Gordon came on, and well, let me talk about him now, because I've got to him. There's a player there. There is a massively promising young player there with pace and the ability to beat a man. His judgment's sometimes lacking. He needs confidence. He needs to take his man on more than he does. But I think the biggest worry I've got about him, because I do think he's a weapon going forward. I think he can crack a defence, and I would like to see more of him playing for Pompey. But I think that he weakens us defensively And I've got a horrible feeling that in the Preston game, that both the goals could have been traced back to him. Not in a particularly obvious way, but just in terms of not doing what he should do to supplement the defensive side of the game in his neck of the woods on that side of the pitch. I mean, he just is missing when you need him a little bit. But yeah, it's not his job. I know his job is to get forward and create goals, and that's what he was sent on to do. But we have to be worried about that side of his game. I'm losing my voice, Sounders. So Gordon, I think, is a work in progress, obviously, and it's a real difficult balance for the manager. Should he play a boy who's got obvious talent and the ability, I think, to crack open a side, but can we afford the defensive deficit in his play and his inexperience? Over to John Massinio for that one. Colby Bishop scored his customary goal. We were all so happy. It was right under the whole 3,600 of us, and we all celebrated with him. It was brilliant, but it all came to nothing because we need to score more goals sometimes. And we needed to score an earlier goal in that game. That would have really put us in a good place. But it didn't happen. Not necessarily Colby's fault, because Colby was not supported as well by the two remaining players that I'm going to talk about now, which are Josh Murphy. Josh Murphy's slightly off his run of wonderful form. Slightly off that now. It's still there, but it's not. It's misfiring a little bit. He looks less comfortable. He is a marked man. He knows that, we know that. It's not nice to be a marked man. It's not nice to be kicked as much as they can possibly kick you. You feel for Murphy, and he needs more support himself from others, because the responsibility is massive on his shoulders. But I just feel that he's wilting a little bit at the moment, and this is a bad time of the season to wilt. We mustn't wilt. No one must wilt now, Sounders. And I just feel that Murphy... but I'm not suggesting that we should rest him. I don't think we can afford to do that. But maybe he'll hopefully recover over the next period of time, because we've got a bit of a gap. Kusini Yengi is a disappointment for me. I think he should be doing better than he is. He's fit now. He surely is fit now. He's not match fit because he hasn't played enough. But he didn't make the mark that one would hope that he would have done. Everyone was pleased that he was playing. Everyone thought that he should have been given a chance. I think a lot of people will have been disappointed. And one of the problems that the crowd have about Kusini Yengi is that he will go to ground too readily and too easily. And he's learnt that he can win free kicks. They didn't come against Preston North End. He must have gone down half a dozen times or more and appealed to the referee. It's no good doing that. I think referees actually don't like that. I think they grow used to it. I think they mark you as a diver. It's not a good look. And it didn't work. And he needs to be more robust. But he didn't really create a chance for himself, and no one created a chance for him, to be fair to him. And it was a disappointing return to starting action for Kusini Yengi, who now goes off to Australia, unbelievably, to play in games over there. He doesn't look... maybe he'll play himself into form with a game or two over there. That will be the greatest, best hope we can have, because he's not the Kusini Yengi that we expected and know is there in him. We're thinking it is anyway. I'm now starting to worry that he's not actually the player that we thought he was and that he's not going to make the grade at the level that we require him. I'm starting to fear that, Sounders. But I hope he proves me wrong. And I'm sure a lot of you won't agree with me. Omani came on for Yengi. It didn't really have. He looked better. In my opinion, he looked better than Yengi, more workmanlike. But he didn't get a chance for himself on the side. And so, at the end of the day, Sounders, it was a subdued away support that melted into the distance around Deepdale, into their cars and train, I suppose, and buses, vans, pickups, motorbikes, I don't know. They deserve better, that wonderful support. But we are missing big players. You can't take out Shaughnessy, Matthews and Atkinson without missing them. And Lang. I have to mention him, Callum Lang, because he came and sat with us. He came and sat about 1 row and 20 seats away from me. Of course, the crowd saw him, or some of them did, and gave him a good rousing song, the Callum Lang song, into the end to acknowledge his presence. And he looked a little suitably embarrassed and pulled his hoodie up over his head. And he was with family or mates, one couldn't tell which. It occurs to me that, you know, it's almost a home game for him, isn't it, up there, Preston? So there would have been a lot of people, family and friends wanting to come to the game, and so he probably had to get more tickets and come and sit with us. I'm sure there were some official tickets in the proper stand somewhere else, but he came and sat with us, and it was actually great fun. The crowd were loving to see him, but he melted away blooming quickly. I can tell you, he'd gone before the end of the game, and who can blame him? I said on Pompey Sound after Argyle that I felt we lack leaders, and nothing I saw at Preston disagreed with that, really. I don't know why, but we do lack experienced players who will take hold of the whole team and get us to play, get us to change, get us to collect ourselves for a big effort. Of course, we were additionally lacking Pack and Ritchie against Preston, so that's even more experience that's not on the pitch anymore. I'm certain that Ritchie will be back. He needed a rest, but he'll be back in the side after the break. But Sounders, we've got to keep our nerve. I know I'm sounding rattled, and I am a little bit, but we've got to keep our nerve, I'm telling us, and we've got to get Murphy and Ritchie firing again. We might have a centre-back, might have one of those guys back. And we were unfortunate. That's why John Mousinho's so upset with this particular game. We were not for 1 minute outplayed. It was just a battle we lost. And we don't like losing. Play out Pompey, Sounders.